We were a perfect match of flaws.
Right.
We went together very well, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Don't do that. I don't like it. But I couldn't.
Sally Field just spilled the beans on something fans totally missed about Smokey and the Bandit. For years, people have loved the movie for its fast cars, wild chases, and Burt Reynolds' cool vibe. But there was a little secret hiding right under everyone's noses, something only Sally really knows. It's the kind of thing that makes you look at the film in a whole new way. By this time, you must have watched it. Now that she's finally opened up, fans can't stop talking about it. What did Sally reveal, and why it changes the whole story? Raw reflection on Smokey and the Bandit. If you grew up in the 70s, or are just a movie buff who loves classic car chases and cheeky humor, then Smokey and the Bandit is probably a film that you know inside and out. It's one of those iconic road movies starring Burt Reynolds, the charismatic bandit himself, alongside the unforgettable Sheriff Buford T. Justice, played by Jackie Gleason. And of course, the lovely and spunky Carrie, played by Sally Field. The film had everything: fast cars, a wild cross-country journey, and enough Southern charm to make you want to wear cowboy boots. But here's the thing, despite Smokey and the Bandit's massive popularity and its spot in pop culture history, there was something about the movie that most fans simply never figured out. And guess who finally spilled the beans? Yup, Sally Field herself. In a recent interview, she revealed a behind-the-scenes nugget that sheds new light on her character, the making of the movie, and even the whole Bandit-Carrie dynamic. First, let's set the stage. Carrie is not just the damsel in distress or the typical love interest. At first glance, she might seem like she's just along for the ride, a bit of eye candy who adds charm and a bit of sass. But Sally Field's revelation hints that there was more going on beneath the surface, a whole layer of intention and nuance that the movie just barely let us glimpse. According to Field, during filming, her character Carrie was meant to be a lot more independent and complicated than what ended up on screen. The director, Hal Needham, and the writers originally envisioned Carrie as a sort of equal partner in crime in the whole Bandit escapade, not just someone who hitched a ride. Field talked about how she was encouraged to bring out this strong, witty, and somewhat rebellious side of Carrie, a woman who wasn't just along for the thrill, but actually had her own reasons for running from the law and ditching her arranged marriage. This is huge because, for decades, fans have mostly seen Carrie as a pretty girl who just got caught up in the Bandit's adventure. But Sally's insight flips that narrative and adds layers to Carrie's character, suggesting she was a fully rounded character with her own agency, motivations, and even a bit of strategy. She wasn't just a passenger, she was a partner in the journey. One of the most interesting things Sally Field shared was about the chemistry and backstory between her and Burt Reynolds' characters. What many fans didn't realize was that the romantic tension and banter weren't just for show. They were based on a real collaborative energy between the actors and a script that originally had a more pronounced love story arc. Apparently, the studio and test audiences at the time pushed to tone down the romance and focus more on the car chases and comedy. So a lot of Carrie's depth got trimmed in the final cut. This is why, for many fans watching the movie, Carrie might come off as a bit underdeveloped or just a sidekick, when in fact, she was written and performed as a strong woman who could hold her own alongside the Bandit. Sally Field's comments really make you want to go back and rewatch the movie, paying closer attention to Carrie's lines and actions, because there's more there than meets the eye. Another fascinating tidbit she revealed was about the filming itself. Sally Field described how physically demanding the role was, despite her character's seemingly easygoing nature. The long shoots, driving scenes, and stunts were intense, and she worked hard to bring authenticity to Carrie's toughness. In a lot of ways, her off-screen grit mirrored what Carrie was supposed to represent on screen. Someone who could handle the heat, even if the script didn't fully showcase that strength. And here's the kicker. Sally Field also mentioned that during filming, there were moments when she and Burt Reynolds would improvise or riff off each other, adding little jokes or tweaks to their characters' interactions that never made it into the final movie. These spontaneous moments added layers to their dynamic. And it's a shame most audiences never got to see them because the editors had to keep the movie tight and fast-paced. What does all this mean for fans? Well, it means that Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just a straightforward fun chase movie. Beneath the surface, it was a film with characters that had more complexity than originally credited. It also means that Sally Field's Carrie deserves a bit more respect and recognition as a fully realized character who wasn't just along for the ride. In a way, Sally's revelation invites us to rethink how we watch not only Smokey and the Bandit, but other classic films from the era, especially those with female characters who may have been sidelined by editing decisions or studio pressures. It's a reminder that sometimes there's more going on behind the scenes and even behind the characters we thought we knew than we ever realized. Field's honesty gives us a fresh perspective and a little nostalgia with a twist. But wait, people who have watched the film actually loved her in the film. A bit ironic? Fans loved Carrie. On the surface, you might think this movie is all about Burt Reynolds' Bandit and his high-speed escapades. And yeah, that's true to an extent, but Carrie isn't just some side note. She's the heart and soul who brings warmth, humor, and a kind of grounded reality to the wild road trip adventure. Carrie is introduced as a kind of free spirit who's tired of the usual small-town life. She's this girl next door, sure, but with a mischievous streak and a hunger for something bigger and more exciting than the dull routines she's been stuck in, and that's instantly relatable. Who hasn't dreamed of throwing caution to the wind and hitting the open road, right? Sally Field nailed that vibe perfectly. She plays Carrie with a blend of sweetness and spunk that makes her feel real and approachable. She's not this untouchable movie star. She's more like someone you'd want to hang out with on a Saturday night. What really makes Carrie such a memorable character is how Sally Field injects so much personality into the role. Her performance feels effortless, but it's packed with little nuances that bring Carrie to life. She's funny, without trying too hard, a little vulnerable, but also tough when it counts. And this mix makes her incredibly likable. Fans immediately connected with her because she was not just a romantic interest or a passenger on the ride. She was a full partner in the chaos. She's the person who jumps in head first, who keeps up with Bandit's wild antics, and who adds her own flavor to the story. Unlike what Sally revealed, the chemistry between Sally Field and Burt Reynolds is pure magic too. They have this playful, easygoing rapport that really sells their on-screen partnership. Watching them interact feels natural and warm, like they're genuinely enjoying each other's company, which translates into a lot of laughs and heartfelt moments. This dynamic helped Smokey and the Bandit stand out from other buddy road trip movies of the era, because it wasn't just about the action or the chase, it was about two people sharing an adventure and finding connection along the way. Another thing fans loved about Carrie is how she flips some of the usual expectations for women in 70s action comedies. Back then, female characters often got stuck in boring stereotypes, either the damsel in distress or the decorative sidekick with no real personality. But Carrie is different. She's smart, capable, and confident. She doesn't just sit in the passenger seat. She drives, she talks back, she has ideas and emotions that matter. Sally Field gave her a strong voice and made sure Carrie held her own in a story that could have been all about the guys. That was refreshing and felt progressive at the time, and it's a big reason why audiences responded so warmly. And let's not forget, Sally Field was coming off some pretty impressive performances before this movie. She had been known for intense, dramatic roles on TV and in films, so seeing her in a fun, light-hearted role like Carrie was a delightful change for fans. It showed off her versatility as an actress and gave the movie an extra layer of credibility. She wasn't just a pretty face. She was a serious talent who could make you laugh, cry, and root for her all at once. That star power helped Smokey and the Bandit reach a wider audience and become the beloved classic it is today. But beyond just the character or the acting, Carrie's role added an emotional core to the movie. Between the fast cars and crazy chases, she brought heart. Her presence made the journey feel like more than just a stunt-filled romp. It became a story about connection, fun, and a bit of rebellion against the everyday grind. For fans, that made all the difference. Carrie was the girl who made the Bandit's wild ride feel personal, relatable, and just plain fun. Field's Carrie is more than just a supporting character in Smokey and the Bandit. She's one of the reasons the movie still resonates with audiences decades later. Fans didn't just love the action or the iconic Trans Am, they loved the warmth, humor, and genuine spirit she brought to the screen. She's that perfect blend of sweet and sassy, down-to-earth but adventurous, and that combination made her unforgettable. Carrie gave the movie heart and helped turn it into the timeless classic that people keep coming back to, laughing and cheering like it's their first time watching. After Smokey and the Bandit, Sally didn't just stick to the same kind of roles. Field after film. Sally was always this versatile actress who could do drama, comedy, and everything in between. So she started picking more serious parts that really showed off her range. For example, in the early 80s, she starred in films like Norma Ray, 1979, and Places in the Heart, 1984, both of which earned her Academy Awards for Best Actress. That's huge, because it showed everyone that she wasn't just this bubbly, cute presence in lighthearted movies. She could really dig deep and deliver powerful, emotionally intense performances. Norma Ray, in particular, became a landmark role for her. She played a factory worker who becomes a union organizer, and her portrayal was raw, real, and inspiring. That movie basically told Hollywood that Sally Field was a force to be reckoned with. Interestingly, Sally's journey after Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just about awards and prestige. It was also about breaking out of the typecasting box that Hollywood often loves to put actresses in. Before and during the Bandit years, she was mostly known as the wholesome girl from TV shows like Gidget and The Flying Nun, so transitioning to serious film roles was a big leap. But she managed it with style, grit, and a lot of heart. Plus, she didn't shy away from television either. She kept coming back to TV projects over the years, proving that she wasn't just a movie star, but a talented performer no matter the medium. Shows like Brothers and Sisters in the 2000s gave her a chance to show more mature, nuanced characters, often dealing with complicated family dynamics, stuff that a lot of people related to and loved watching. On a personal level, Sally Field's post-Smokey and the Bandit years were also marked by her openness about her struggles and triumphs. She's talked openly about her experiences with motherhood, relationships, and even mental health, which is kind of refreshing because it makes her feel so relatable. She's one of those celebrities who doesn't put up a perfect facade. She's candid, funny, and honest about her life's ups and downs. That authenticity has endeared her to generations of fans, making her not just a respected actress, but a beloved figure. And you know what? That's probably why she's managed to keep working steadily for decades, because people trust her. They want to see her stories, and she brings real humanity to whatever role she takes on. Sally Field has been in some seriously cool projects. Even in the last 10 to 15 years, she had that recurring role as Mary Todd Lincoln in Lincoln, 2012. Directed by Steven Spielberg, which was another example of her knack for bringing historical and complex figures to life. And she's popped up in films like Hello, My Name is Doris and the Amazing Spider-Man movies, showing she's not afraid to mix it up between indie films and big-budget franchises. Plus, her work in TV miniseries and guest spots continues to showcase her timeless appeal and skill. Perfect action comedy. Smokey and the Bandit is one of those classic movies that became a huge hit for a bunch of reasons. When it came out, it felt fresh and fun, mixing comedy with action in a way that just clicked with audiences. The movie wasn't trying to be some deep or serious drama. Instead, it leaned into being a good time with fast cars, clever jokes, and a bit of rebellious spirit. Burt Reynolds, who played the Bandit, had this charm that made people root for him right away. He wasn't a perfect hero, but he was cool, smooth, and just the kind of guy you wanted to watch on screen. Plus, the connection between him and Sally Field added a nice touch of light-hearted romance that didn't feel forced. One big reason Smokey and the Bandit was such a success was its perfect timing. The 70s was a decade when car culture was huge in America. People loved muscle cars and racing movies. The film tapped into that excitement by focusing on a wild chase that involved a big rig and a fast Pontiac Trans Am. The car itself became a star, and it helped that the filmmakers showed off some really impressive driving stunts. Audiences loved the thrill of the chase scenes and the way the movie balanced humor with action. It wasn't just about speed, but about having fun and breaking the rules a little, which gave it a rebellious edge that really resonated. Another thing that worked in Smokey and the Bandit's favor was its simplicity. The plot was easy to follow. The Bandit has to haul a truckload of illegal beer from Texas to Georgia in a limited time while avoiding the law. Because the story was straightforward, it didn't get bogged down in complicated twists or explanations. This made it accessible to everyone and kept the pace fast and entertaining. The dialogue was sharp and funny, and the supporting cast, especially Jackie Gleason as the grumpy sheriff, brought extra laughs and memorable moments. The movie had just the right mix of characters to keep things lively without overcomplicating the story. The movie also connected with the everyday person's sense of adventure. It felt like the Bandit was that guy who could outsmart the system and get away with something exciting. That idea of outwitting the cops and living on the edge was appealing in a time when people were tired of authority and rules. The humor was never mean-spirited but playful, which made it feel light and inviting. People could watch it after a long day and just enjoy the ride without having to think too hard. That kind of easygoing entertainment is part of why it still has a loyal fan base today. Lastly, the marketing and word of mouth helped push Smokey and the Bandit to the next level. It didn't open with a huge budget or massive hype. Instead, it grew on people because it was genuinely entertaining. The movie theaters saw packed crowds, and fans spread the word. Burt Reynolds was becoming a superstar, and this movie helped cement his place in Hollywood. The soundtrack, featuring country and southern rock, also helped set the tone and connected with the film's setting. All these pieces combined made Smokey and the Bandit not just a movie, but a cultural moment. It wasn't just about the story or the cars, but the whole vibe of fun, freedom, and a little bit of mischief. The film wasn't trying to change the world, but it gave people a fun escape and some memorable characters to cheer for. It showed that sometimes all you need is a simple story, a cool car, and a few laughs to create something unforgettable. That's why, even decades later, people still talk about it and enjoy watching it again. It's a classic for a reason, plain and simple. Wait, one more reason why the film became popular was because of two elements: cars and chases. The wild ride. The film is famous for its car chases and fast driving, but what really stole the show were the vehicles themselves. The star car, without a doubt, is the black Pontiac Trans Am. This car wasn't just any Trans Am, it was a 1977 model that had this sleek look with its glossy black paint and the huge fiery gold decal of a bird on the hood. That bird became iconic and instantly recognizable. The Trans Am symbolized speed, coolness, and rebellion in the movie. Burt Reynolds' character Bandit drove it with such swagger that it felt like the car was an extension of his personality. The car had this powerful V8 engine that made it roar like a beast when he hit the gas. It was fast, agile, and a perfect fit for the high-stakes car chases and all the stunts in the movie. The Trans Am became a legend because of this film, and it boosted Pontiac's sales because everyone suddenly wanted one. But the Trans Am was not the only vehicle that mattered in Smokey and the Bandit. The big rig that Bandit was trying to outrun the cops with was also super important to the story. This truck was a Peterbilt 359, and it was hauling a load of Coors beer across state lines, which was illegal at the time in the southeastern United States. The rig had this old-school look with chrome details, big exhaust stacks, and a long nose. It was big, loud, and intimidating, but also looked like it could handle anything. The truck was driven by Cledis the Snowman, who was played by Jerry Reed. The chemistry between the rig and the Trans Am was awesome, because it was like a perfect team. The truck carried the prize cargo, and the Trans Am was the speedy getaway car that could dodge the cops and obstacles in the way. The contrast between the big bulky truck and the sleek fast car made the chase scenes even more exciting and fun to watch. Then there were the police cars, or the Smokies, as Bandit called them. The cops drove a bunch of classic 70s cruisers that felt really authentic and added to the fun cat-and-mouse vibe of the film. Most notably, there was Sheriff Buford T. Justice's car. He drove a 1977 Dodge Monaco, which was a big, boxy police cruiser that was meant to look tough, but also kind of goofy, because Buford was a bit of a loud and crazy character. The car had all the typical police features like sirens, lights, and bold decals, but it also looked a little outdated compared to the sleek Trans Am. This contrast made the chases hilarious because Buford was always trying so hard to catch Bandit, but his car just did not have that cool factor. Plus, the way the car was used in the movie with all the crashes, near misses, and high-speed antics made it a memorable part of the story. There were also a few other smaller cars and vehicles that appeared throughout the movie, like some old pickups and smaller sedans, but none of them really stood out the way the Trans Am, the Peterbilt, and the Dodge Monaco did. These cars helped build the world of the movie and gave it a real southern road trip feel. You got a sense of driving on open highways, through small towns and wide landscapes, all while these classic cars made the journey more fun and exciting. The vehicles really became characters in their own right because the movie was as much about the thrill of the ride as it was about the actual story of running beer and avoiding the cops. Censorship and challenges. When the film first aired on American network television, the folks in charge of censorship had quite a task on their hands. The original movie was full of raw language and some edgy moments that just didn't sit well with TV standards at the time. So, to make the film suitable for a broader audience, especially families, the network had to tone down a lot of the dialogue. One of the most famous changes was the way they handled Buford T. Justice's signature phrase, "sumbitch," which was a milder way of saying son of a bitch. Instead of leaving it in, the censors overdubbed it with scumbum, which was much more kid-friendly. This change was so popular that the phrase "scum bum" even showed up later on a 2007 Hot Wheels toy, specifically on a 1970 Firebird Trans Am model. It's kind of funny how a censored phrase from a film became a piece of pop culture in its own right. Interestingly, most of the original actors returned to re-record their lines for the TV version, except for Jackie Gleason, who played Sheriff Buford. Because Gleason wasn't available to redub, they brought in Henry Corden, the voice actor who took over Fred Flintstone after the original actor passed away, to replace a lot of Buford's dialogue. This created a bit of an odd experience for viewers familiar with the movie, since the voice didn't quite match Gleason's distinctive style. In the United Kingdom, the movie went through an even heavier dubbing process, especially when it aired on the BBC, making the film feel somewhat different than the original. More recently, the original version has been shown on commercial channels like ITV, but even then, the stronger language is often cut out, sometimes in a way that feels a bit awkward or forced. Another tricky issue the movie faced was the use of really strong language that could have triggered a more restrictive rating. For example, there's a scene where Sheriff Justice calls a state trooper's car a piece of crap, and then tells the trooper to fuck off. Obviously, saying fuck would have earned the movie an R rating, which could have seriously limited its audience. The filmmakers cleverly avoided this by having a big rig horn blast drown out the swear word. This way, the insult wasn't heard clearly, but it was still understood from the context. Plus, the truck horn interruption was written to be funny, so it worked as a comedic gag and a smart way to dodge stricter censorship rules at the same time. Fast forward to 2006, when the movie was re-released on DVD with a digitally remastered audio track. This release came with Dolby 5.1 surround sound, which sounded impressive, but came with some downsides. The original film's authentic sounds were replaced in many scenes, which was a bummer for fans who loved the gritty realism of the original audio. For instance, the diesel engine starting sequence at the beginning of the movie was completely redone, with new sounds that didn't quite match the truck's real engine. Other moments, like when Bandit speeds off to convince Cletus to take the bet, or when Buford's car roof pops off, also had altered sound effects. Even some small but charming sounds, like the barking of Cletus's dog Fred, were removed. The music, especially during the final chase scene set to the Southern classic, was also cut out. Earlier DVD versions and the 40th anniversary Blu-ray release kept the original soundtrack intact, which most fans appreciated more because it felt true to the original movie. The new audio track was actually less accurate for the types of cars shown, especially the Trans Am and other Pontiac vehicles, because the original sounds had been recorded live during filming and captured the real power and character of the vehicles. Beyond language and audio challenges, it faced other hurdles when brought to TV and home media. The movie's fast-paced car chases and action sequences were pretty intense for network television, which meant some scenes had to be cut or shortened to fit into commercial breaks and meet content guidelines. The pacing sometimes felt a little off on TV because of these edits. Additionally, the film's depiction of illegal beer running and rebellious cops chasing outlaws meant it touched on subjects that censors and network executives worried might send the wrong message to viewers, especially younger ones. So, while the movie's humor and charm remained intact for the most part, the edits and dubbing inevitably softened some of its original edge and grit. Another subtle challenge was how the film's Southern culture and slang translated to a broader national audience. Some of the regional accents, jokes, and mannerisms had to be adjusted or toned down to avoid confusion or offending certain viewers, which again slightly watered down the authentic vibe that made the movie special. These compromises were part of the trade-off between keeping the spirit of the film and making it acceptable for network television audiences in the late 70s and early 80s. Despite all the censorship, dubbing, and editing challenges, the film managed to become a beloved classic on TV, just like it was in theaters. The clever workarounds like overdubbing "sumbitch" to "scum bum," the truck horn gag to cover up swearing, and the actors re-recording their lines showed the lengths the networks went to keep the movie accessible while respecting broadcast standards. And while some fans were unhappy with the altered sound effects on later DVD releases, the original theatrical versions remain popular and celebrated for their authentic feel. All these challenges highlight how difficult it was to bring a raw, fun, and slightly rebellious movie like Smokey and the Bandit into people's living rooms in a way that satisfied both audiences and censors. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content.